The asteroid mining station Hope's Harvest had been the pride of the Kelm Collective for nearly 3 standard cycles. Carved into the heart of a massive iron-rich asteroid, its tunnels stretched for kilometers, following veins of precious metals that would fuel their peaceful civilization for generations. The soft blue glow of bioluminescent panels illuminated corridors where hundreds of Kelm workers moved with quiet efficiency, their 4 delicate arms perfectly suited for the intricate work of mineral extraction. Administrator Tem stood in the central command chamber, his large dark eyes reflecting the holographic displays that showed mining progress across 17 different sectors. The Kelm had evolved on a gentle world of endless meadows and warm seas, and their naturally peaceful disposition had served them well in building one of the galaxy's most prosperous trading civilizations. They had no warriors, no weapons beyond mining tools, and no enemies they could name. That changed when the proximity alarms began screaming. Administrator called Operator Nell from her station, her melodic voice strained with confusion. "I'm detecting 12 vessels approaching from the outer system. Configuration unknown, but they're moving fast and broadcasting no identification codes." Tem's forearms moved gracefully over his console, pulling up tactical displays he rarely needed to access. The approaching ships were sleek, predatory things, their hull designs unlike anything in the Kelm database of known vessels. More troubling, they were armed with energy weapons of considerable power. "Attempt communication," Tem ordered, though a cold feeling was beginning to settle in his twin hearts. "Standard greeting protocols." Nell's response came seconds later, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're responding, Administrator. It's the Vex." The name sent ripples of fear through the command center. Every species in the galactic community knew of the Vex, though few had survived encounters with them. They were raiders, pillagers, a nomadic warrior culture that swept through systems like a plague of metal locusts. Their philosophy was simple: take what you need, destroy what you don't, leave nothing behind that might threaten you later. "Why would they come here?" Nell asked, her small frame trembling. "We have nothing they want, just minerals and machinery." Tem knew better. The Vex didn't just want resources, they wanted submission. They had heard the stories from the Outer Rim, colonies that had been offered a choice: serve the Vex as slave labor or be eliminated entirely. The Kelm, with their advanced mining technology and strategic location along major trade routes, would be valuable assets for a raiding fleet. "Activate all defensive systems," Tem commanded, though he knew how inadequate they were. The Hope's Harvest had basic shield generators and a handful of mining lasers that could be repurposed as weapons, but they were meant to deter pirates and claim jumpers, not military vessels. The first Vex attack came without warning. Energy bolts slammed into the station's shields, overloading them within seconds. The lights flickered as power systems strained to compensate. Through the viewing ports, Tem could see the Vex ships moving in perfect formation, their angular hulls bristling with weapon emplacements. "Send the beacon," Tem ordered, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Emergency protocols, maximum range transmission." Nell's hands flew over her controls, activating the Kelm Collective's most closely guarded secret, the Alliance beacon. It was a quantum-encrypted distress signal that could only be decoded by their allied species: the peaceful Moor Federation, the scholarly Yule Republic, and the merchant fleets of the Drell Consortium. In theory, help would come within hours. The beacon launched just as the second wave of attacks began, the encoded message spreading across subspace at faster-than-light speeds. What Tem didn't know was that the quantum frequencies used by Kelm technology resonated with the communication arrays of a species not yet known to the galactic community. A young, aggressive race from a death world called Earth, whose deep space exploration vessels had only recently begun venturing beyond their own solar system. As the Hope's Harvest shuddered under another barrage of Vex fire, that fateful signal raced through the void toward an entirely unintended recipient. Captain Maya Lee was nursing her 3rd cup of synthetic coffee when the ship's communication array picked up the signal. The bridge of the UES Resilience hummed with the quiet efficiency of a crew that had spent 8 months in deep space, mapping potential colony sites and testing new faster-than-light drive configurations. It was supposed to be a routine scientific mission, far from the political tensions and resource wars that plagued Earth's inner system. "Captain," called Communications Officer Park from his station, "I'm picking up something unusual. It's not broadcasting on any frequency we recognize, but the computer is flagging it as a distress signal. Lee set down her coffee and moved to Park Station, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal deck plates. The Resilience was humanity's first true deep space explorer, a kilometer-long vessel bristling with sensors, defensive systems, and the most advanced technology Earth could produce. It was also completely alone in a galaxy that, until this moment, humanity believed to be empty of intelligent life. "Let me hear it," Lee ordered. The bridge speakers crackled with static, then resolved into a complex pattern of tones and modulations that sounded almost musical. The ship's quantum computer worked frantically to analyze the signal, running it through every linguistic and mathematical algorithm in its database. "Computer analysis suggests it's a mathematical progression," reported Science Officer Kim from her station. "The pattern repeats every 37 seconds with increasing urgency markers. If I had to guess, I'd say it's definitely a distress call." Executive Officer Torres approached the captain's chair, his expression grim. "Captain, regulations are clear about first contact protocols. We're supposed to report any sign of alien intelligence to Earth Command and await instructions." Lee studied the tactical display, which showed the signal's point of origin, an asteroid field approximately 6 light hours away. Close enough to reach in less than a day with their current drive system, but far enough that any response would take weeks to arrive from Earth. "How long has the signal been broadcasting?" she asked. "Based on degradation patterns, I'd estimate it started about 4 hours ago," Park replied. "But Captain, there's something else. I'm detecting weapon signatures at the source location. High-energy discharges consistent with military-grade systems." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, an alien species was under attack, calling desperately for help that might never come. Lee had joined the Space Force to explore and protect, to represent the best of humanity among the stars. The decision should have been difficult, but she found it surprisingly easy. "Plot a course for the signal source," she ordered. "Maximum speed." "Captain," Torres protested, "this could be a trap. We don't know anything about alien motivations or capabilities. We could be flying into a war zone." Lee turned to face her. Crew, seeing the mix of fear and determination in their faces. These were volunteers, every one of them, people who had left Earth behind to venture into the unknown. They had signed up for exactly this kind of situation, even if they hadn't expected it. "Mr. Torres, somewhere out there, people are dying while calling for help. Maybe they're nothing like us. Maybe they're hostile. Maybe we're making the biggest mistake in human history." She paused, looking around the bridge. "But maybe we're the only chance they have. And maybe this is exactly why we're out here." She activated the ship's intercom, her voice carrying to every deck and compartment of the Resilience. "All hands, this is the captain. We've detected what appears to be an alien distress signal. We're going to respond, which means we're about to make first contact with another intelligent species under combat conditions. This isn't what we trained for, but it's what we're going to do. Prepare for possible hostile contact. All departments, battle stations." The ship's engines roared to life, pushing the Resilience toward an encounter that would change everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. Behind them, Earth spun peacefully in the void, unaware that its children were about to announce humanity's presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. As they accelerated toward the unknown, Lee couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. The Resilience dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the asteroid field, her sensors immediately painting a picture of chaos and destruction. Captain Lee stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display resolve into a scene that made her blood run cold. The mining station was clearly visible, a massive structure carved into the largest asteroid, its surface scarred by energy weapon impacts. Debris floated in expanding clouds around it, the remains of smaller vessels that had been caught in the crossfire. Most troubling were the 12 predatory ships that circled the station like sharks, their sleek hulls gleaming as they poured devastating fire into the failing shields. "Analysis, Mr. Kim," Lee ordered. Science Officer Kim's fingers flew over her console, correlating sensor data with the ship's threat assessment systems. "The station appears to be non-military, Captain. Its defensive systems are minimal, basically repurposed industrial equipment. The attacking vessels are heavily armed, military configuration. They're systematically destroying the station's defensive capabilities. Any sign of the species that sent the distress call? Scanning now, Kim replied. I'm detecting multiple life signs within the station. Bipedal, carbon-based, average height approximately 1.8 meters. The attacking ships contain a different species entirely. Larger, more robust physiological signatures. Communications Officer Park looked up from his station, his face pale. Captain, I'm intercepting communications between the attacking vessels. The computer can't translate it yet, but the tone, it sounds like they're coordinating a final assault. Lee watched as one of the station's defensive emplacements exploded in a shower of sparks and metal. The beings inside were clearly outmatched, their peaceful mining equipment no match for purpose-built warships. She had seen similar scenarios during the resource wars on Earth. Technologically advanced but peaceful settlements overrun by military forces designed for conquest. Weapons status, Mr. Torres, she commanded. Her executive officer's jaw tightened. All systems operational, Captain. Plasma cannons charged, missile tubes loaded, point defense systems online. But we're outnumbered 12-1, and we don't know their capabilities. What we know, Lee said, studying the tactical display, is that they're slaughtering civilians who called for help. Mr. Park, any response to our hails? The station is still broadcasting the distress signal, but no direct communication. The attacking vessels haven't acknowledged our presence at all. Lee made her decision. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. We're going in. The Resilience surged forward, her engines glowing with unleashed power. The human vessel was built for exploration, but Earth's violent history had taught its children never to venture into the unknown unarmed. She carried enough firepower to level a small city, and her crew had trained extensively in combat scenarios. The first Vex ship to notice their approach turned lazily toward them, its pilot apparently unconcerned by the appearance of a single, unknown vessel. That indifference cost them dearly. The Resilience opened fire at maximum range, her plasma cannons striking with surgical precision. The alien vessel's shields flared and collapsed under the assault, followed immediately by a spread of nuclear-tipped missiles that tore through its hull. The explosion lit up the asteroid field like a miniature star. First kill confirmed, Torres reported, his voice tight with adrenaline. Remaining vessels are breaking off their attack and moving to intercept us. The tactical display showed the Vex ships spreading into a classic attack formation, their movements coordinated and professional. These were experienced warriors, accustomed to easy victories against peaceful species. But they had never encountered anything like humanity. Lee gripped her command chair as the first enemy salvo struck their shields. The Resilience shuddered but held together, her defensive systems absorbing and redirecting the energy. Return fire, full spread. Show them what a Deathworlder can do. The human vessel unleashed hell. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked across the void, each shot aimed with deadly precision. The humans had learned warfare in the harsh crucible of their homeworld, where every conflict was a struggle for survival. They fought not with the detached professionalism of career soldiers, but with the desperate fury of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on a planet that tried to kill them every day. 2 more Vex ships died in the opening exchange, their hulls cracked open by weapons designed to punch through the toughest materials Earth's engineers could devise. The remaining ships began to exhibit something the Vex rarely experienced: uncertainty. Inside the mining station, Administrator Tem watched in stunned amazement as the unknown vessel tore into his attackers with ruthless efficiency. Whatever species had answered their call, they were unlike anything in the known galaxy. Aggressive, powerful, and apparently willing to risk everything to help complete strangers. The tide of battle was turning, but the cost was only beginning to be counted. The Vex commander, Krex the Bloodtaker, stared at his tactical display in growing disbelief. In 300 raids across a dozen star systems, he had never encountered resistance like this. The unknown vessel moved with predatory grace, its weapons striking with lethal precision while its pilot seemed to anticipate every tactical maneuver his fleet attempted. "What species is this?" snarled his weapons master Vorth. "Their technology is unknown. Their tactics are aggressive, beyond reason." Krex's scarred features twisted into what passed for a grin among his people. The Vex had evolved on a world of endless conflict, where only the strongest survived to breed. They respected strength above all else, and this newcomer was displaying plenty of it. Perhaps we have finally found worthy prey. Aboard the Resilience, Captain Lee was learning just how costly her decision would be. The Vex ships might have been caught off guard initially, but they were adapting quickly. Their return fire was becoming more coordinated, more accurate. Warning. Lights flashed across the bridge as damage reports flooded in from all sections. Forward shields down to 60%, reported Chief Engineer Walsh over the intercom. We've got hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. I need time to reroute power systems. Time we don't have, Lee replied, watching as 4 Vex ships moved to flank them while the others maintained a frontal assault. Mr. Torres, prepare for emergency maneuvers. We're going to thread the needle. The Resilience dove toward the asteroid field, using the massive rocks as cover while her weapons continued to spit death at the pursuing Vex vessels. Lee's tactical training kicked in, drawing on humanity's long history of asymmetric warfare. When outnumbered, use the terrain. When outgunned, use speed and cunning. Captain, called Communications Officer Park. I'm getting something from the station. The computer's making progress on their language. They're thanking us. They're asking who we are. Lee spared a moment to glance at the mining station, still under fire from the remaining Vex ships, but no longer facing imminent destruction. Through the viewports, she could see small figures moving behind the transparent aluminum windows, the beings they had come to save, watching their rescuers fight and die for them. Tell them we're humans, she said. Tell them we heard their call. The battle raged through the asteroid field, a deadly game of cat and mouse among the floating mountains of rock and ice. The Resilience used every trick in her arsenal: electronic warfare systems that scrambled enemy targeting, decoy drones that drew fire away from critical systems, and close-range plasma bursts that turned entire asteroids into improvised weapons. But the Vex were learning too. They adapted their formations, concentrated their fire, and began using the asteroids to their own advantage. A lucky shot penetrated the Resilience's weakened forward shields, punching through the hull and venting atmosphere into space. Medical emergency on Deck 5, came the call over the intercom. Multiple casualties, need immediate assistance. Lee felt each loss like a physical blow, but she couldn't afford to hesitate. Every human who died here was dying to protect strangers they had never met, beings from a world they couldn't even pronounce. It was humanity at its best and worst, noble and reckless in equal measure. All remaining missiles target the lead vessel, she ordered. Everything we have. The Resilience unleashed her final salvo, every nuclear warhead in her arsenal streaking toward Krex's command ship. The Vex commander saw them coming and tried to evade, but his vessel was too large, too committed to its attack run. The missiles struck in sequence, each explosion weakening his shields until the final warhead punched through and detonated against his hull. Krex's ship broke apart in a ball of plasma and debris, taking with it the Vex fleet's coordination and morale. The remaining ships found themselves facing a human vessel that, despite its damage, continued to fight with relentless determination. "This is impossible," breathed Vorth as he watched his commander's flagship die. "No species fights like this. No one risks everything for strangers. But the humans did. Because that's what humans were. A species that had learned to cooperate or die, to protect the weak or perish together. They were Deathworlders, apex predators who had turned their killer instincts toward protecting rather than destroying. The surviving Vex ships began to retreat, their crews finally understanding what they had encountered. This wasn't just another prey species to be harvested. This was something new, something dangerous, something that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. As the enemy vessels fled into the darkness, Captain Lee slumped in, her command chair, exhausted and grieving for the crew members who would never see Earth again. But they had done something remarkable. They had answered a call for help from strangers and proven that humanity belonged among the stars. The silence that followed the Vex retreat was almost deafening. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of the Resilience, surveying the damage reports flooding in from every section of her ship. The cost of their intervention was becoming brutally clear. "Casualty. Report," she ordered, dreading the answer. Chief Medical Officer Reynolds's voice came through the intercom, heavy with exhaustion and grief. 18 dead, Captain. 37 wounded, 12 critically. We lost most of the forward weapons. Crew when that plasma bolt penetrated Deck 5. Engineering Team 3 died trying to prevent a core breach. Lee closed her eyes for a moment, letting the weight of those losses settle on her shoulders. 18 human beings who would never see their families again, never walk on Earth's soil, never know that their sacrifice had saved hundreds of alien lives. The names and faces flashed through her mind. Rodriguez from Navigation, barely 23 years old. Chief Petty Officer Jackson, who had 3 children waiting for him back home. Dr. Patel, the xenobiologist who had dreamed of making first contact under peaceful circumstances. Memorial services will be held as soon as we're secure, Lee announced to the bridge crew. They died as heroes, protecting innocents. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten. Through the main view screen, she could see the mining station Hope's Harvest, its hull scarred but intact. Repair crews moved across its surface like tiny insects, working to restore systems damaged in the attack. The beings they had saved were alive because humans had chosen to answer a call meant for others. Captain, reported Science Officer Kim, I'm detecting movement from the station. A small craft is approaching. Appears to be unarmed, probably a shuttle. Let them come, Lee replied. But maintain defensive posture. We don't know their intentions. The alien shuttle was a graceful thing, all curves and flowing lines that spoke of a species more concerned with aesthetics than warfare. It docked, with the resilience using a universal coupling system, suggesting these aliens were familiar with multi-species cooperation. Through the airlock came the station's administrator, flanked by 2 companions. Tem stood in the Resilience's main cargo bay, studying the humans who had risked everything to save his people. They were bipedal like the Keln, but built more robustly, with forward-facing eyes and predatory features that spoke of an evolutionary history very different from his own species. What struck him most was their demeanor. Alert, cautious, but not hostile. These were warriors who could choose when to fight and when to extend friendship. The translation device strapped to his chest worked frantically to convert his melodic Keln speech into the harsh, clipped syllables of human language. I am Administrator, Tem of the Keln Collective. You answered our call for help when you had no obligation to do so. Many of your people died protecting mine. Why? Captain Lee stepped forward, her expression solemn. Because it was the right thing to do. We heard someone calling for help and we came. That's what we do. Tem's large, dark eyes reflected confusion. But we are strangers to you. Unknown. You could not have known if we were worthy of such sacrifice. Didn't matter, Lee replied simply. You were in trouble. That was enough. The concept seemed to short-circuit something in Tem's worldview. In the known galaxy, species helped their allies, their trade partners, their genetic relatives. But these humans had intervened in a conflict between complete strangers, risking their own lives for beings they had never met. It was unprecedented. What are you? Tem asked finally. What kind of species does such things? Lee considered the question carefully. How do you explain humanity to an alien intelligence? How do you describe a species that had spent millennia killing each other before finally learning to cooperate? How do you convey the contradiction of beings capable of both terrible violence and noble sacrifice? We're survivors, she said at last. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. Predators, diseases, disasters, and each other. We learned that sometimes the only way to survive is to protect those who can't protect themselves. We learned that strength means nothing if you don't use it to help others. Tem processed this information, his translator working to convey concepts for which the Keln language had no equivalent words. The idea of a death world was theoretical to his people. They knew such planets existed, but had always assumed they were uninhabitable. The concept that intelligent life could evolve under such conditions was revolutionary. You are from a death world, Tem said, the words carrying new weight. I have heard stories of such places, but never believed life could thrive there, much less achieve spaceflight. Earth made us tough, Lee admitted. Maybe too tough, but it also taught us the value of cooperation, of standing together against threats that would destroy us individually. When we heard your call, we couldn't ignore it. That's not who we are. As the conversation continued, word of the human intervention spread through the galactic communication networks. The Keln Collective's emergency broadcasts described the arrival of unknown warriors who had defeated a Vex raiding fleet. Beings from a death world who answered calls for help from species they had never encountered. In the depths of space, other civilizations began to take notice. The galaxy had just gotten considerably more interesting. The medical bay of the Resilience had been converted into a makeshift diplomatic center, the only space large enough to accommodate both human and Keln representatives while maintaining appropriate security protocols. Captain Lee sat across from Administrator Tem, a portable translation device between them, providing real-time communication between their species. Tem's 4 delicate arms moved gracefully as he spoke, his bioluminescent skin patches pulsing with patterns that his translator identified as emotional emphasis. Captain Lee, my people have been part of the galactic community for over 2,000 of your years. In all that time, we have never encountered a species like yours. How so? Lee asked, genuinely curious. The past 6 hours had been a crash course in galactic politics, and she was beginning to understand just how unprecedented their intervention had been. The galaxy is divided into spheres of influence, Tem explained. The Keln Collective maintains peaceful relations with 17 different species, trade agreements with 43 others, and mutual defense pacts with our closest allies. When we sent our distress signal, it was encoded with quantum signatures that should have reached only those who had agreed to help us in times of crisis. Lee frowned. But we received it anyway. Yes, and that suggests your communication technology operates on principles unknown to our scientists. But more importantly, you responded without any agreement, without any obligation, without even knowing who or what you were helping. Dr. Kim, the ship's xenobiologist, leaned forward from her position at the side of the table. Administrator Tem, can you tell us about the species that attacked you? The Vex? Tem's skin patterns shifted to darker hues, what the translator identified as expressions of fear and distaste. The Vex Dominion is a nomadic warrior culture that has plagued the Outer Rim for centuries. They are consummate predators, physically powerful, technologically advanced, and utterly ruthless. Most species simply avoid the regions where they operate. Most species? Lee repeated. But not all. There are legends, Tem admitted reluctantly, of Deathworld species that have successfully resisted the Vex. But these are considered myths by most serious scholars. The conditions required to produce such beings are theoretically impossible to survive. Dr. Kim exchanged a glance with Captain Lee. What kind of conditions? Extreme gravitational forces, violent weather patterns, predatory ecosystems, geological instability, radiation exposure, Tem listed. Worlds where life itself is constantly under threat. The theory is that any species that could evolve intelligence under such conditions would be too aggressive, too violent to achieve space travel. They would destroy themselves before reaching the stars. And yet, Lee said with a slight smile, here we are. Indeed. Tem's patterns shifted to what the translator identified as wonderment. Your species represents a paradigm shift in our understanding of evolution and civilization. You are clearly intelligent, capable of advanced technology and space travel. But you are also capable of violence on a scale that terrifies most known species. The conversation was interrupted by Communications Officer Park's voice over the intercom. Captain, we're receiving multiple incoming transmissions. Dozens of them, from different sources throughout the system. The computer identifies at least 8 different language patterns. Lee stood, her expression growing serious. Patch them through to the main display. The wall screen flickered to life, showing a cascade of alien faces and forms. Graceful beings with translucent skins spoke in harmonious tones. Crystalline entities pulsed with internal light as they transmitted mathematical equations. Insectoid. Creatures clicked and chittered in complex rhythms. All of them were trying to communicate with the humans. They all want to know the same thing, Park reported from the bridge. Who are we? Where do we come from? And why did we intervene in a conflict that wasn't our concern? Tem's skin patterns had shifted to brilliant golds and silvers, expressions of amazement. Captain, do you understand what this means? Word of your actions has spread throughout the local galactic region. These are representatives from dozens of different civilizations, all of whom want to make contact with your species. Lee felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. Humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. Not as explorers or traders, but as warriors willing to fight and die for strangers. The implications were staggering. "Administrator Tem," she said carefully, "what happens now? How does the galaxy typically respond to new species?" "Usually, there is a careful process of observation, cultural exchange, and gradual integration. New species are evaluated for their technological level, their aggressive tendencies, their potential value as allies or threats." Tem paused, his patterns shifting to deeper hues. "But your species has bypassed all of that. You have demonstrated both advanced technology and extreme willingness to use violence in defense of others. The galaxy will not ignore you." Through the view screen, Lee could see more ships arriving at the edge of the asteroid field. Sleek, vessels bearing the insignia of species she couldn't identify, all drawn by reports of the Deathworld warriors who had defeated a Vex raiding fleet. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days. After the battle, the asteroid field had transformed into an impromptu diplomatic conference. Ships from a dozen different species floated in carefully maintained formations around the damaged mining station, their crews conducting the galaxy's first official contact with humanity through a mixture of curiosity, fear, and calculation. Captain. Lee stood in the Resilience's main conference room, facing a holographic display that showed representatives from the major galactic powers. The Moore Federation's ambassador, a tall, graceful being with silver skin and large eyes, spoke in melodious tones that the translation systems rendered into crisp English. "Captain Lee, the Federation wishes to formally thank your species for your intervention on behalf of the Keln Collective. However, we must address the concerning implications of your actions." "Concerning how?" Lee asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. The Yule Republic's representative, a scholarly-looking creature with multiple manipulator arms and a crystalline cranium, leaned forward. "Your species demonstrated technology and tactics unknown to our databases. More troubling, you showed a willingness to engage in lethal combat without provocation or formal declaration of hostilities. This suggests a level of aggression that concerns many in the galactic community." Lee felt her jaw tighten. "We responded to a distress call. We defended innocent people from raiders. If that concerns you, maybe you should examine your own response to the situation." The comment caused visible reactions among the alien diplomats. The Drell Consortium's Merchant Prince representative, a rotund being covered in what appeared to be living metal, made sounds that the translator identified as nervous laughter. "This is precisely what we mean," the Moore ambassador continued. "Your immediate assumption is that those who disagree with you are morally deficient. Your species appears to view the galaxy in terms of absolute right and wrong, with yourselves as arbiters of justice." Administrator Tem, who had been quietly observing the exchange, spoke up from his position near the display. "With respect, Ambassador Vell, the humans did not appoint themselves as arbiters. They simply responded to a call for help that others ignored. The Keln Collective's distress signal was transmitted on restricted frequencies," the Yule representative protested. "It was meant for your allies, not unknown species with unknown agendas." "And yet," Tem replied, his bioluminescent patterns shifting to what humans had learned indicated firm resolve. "My people are alive because these unknown species answered when our allies did not." The uncomfortable silence that followed was broken by Communications Officer Park's voice over the intercom. "Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. It's Admiral Chen, and he does not sound happy." Lee sighed. She had been dreading this moment since the battle ended. "Put him through to my ready room. I'll take it privately." As Lee left the conference room, the alien diplomats continued their debate. What they didn't know was that their entire conversation was being recorded and transmitted to intelligence services across the galaxy. The human intervention had created ripple effects that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. In the Outer Rim territories, Vex survivors spread word of the new species that fought with unprecedented ferocity. Raiding fleets began avoiding sectors where human ships might be present. Peaceful species started requesting information about potential human protection services. And in the dark corners of space where the galaxy's worst predators gathered, New plans were being made to test these self-appointed guardians. Meanwhile, aboard a luxury yacht belonging to the hegemony of Zek, the galaxy's most powerful military alliance, General Korak studied reports of the human intervention with growing interest. His species had dominated galactic affairs for 3 centuries through superior technology and ruthless efficiency. The appearance of potential rivals was both concerning and intriguing. These humans, he mused to his tactical advisor, they fight like us, but they claim noble motivations. They possess advanced weapons, but use them to protect the weak. They are either the most dangerous hypocrites in the galaxy, or they represent a genuine threat to our dominance, his advisor finished. Back aboard the Resilience, Lee emerged from her conversation with Earth Command looking grim. The Admiral had been predictably furious about unauthorized first contact, but he had also been realistic about the situation. Humanity was now a known quantity in galactic politics, whether they were ready or not. She returned to the conference room to find the alien diplomats had reached some sort of consensus. The Moore ambassador spoke for the group. Captain Lee, the galactic community has decided to extend provisional recognition to your species, pending further evaluation of your intentions and capabilities. What does that mean exactly? Lee asked. It means, interjected the Drell merchant prince, that trade opportunities exist for a species capable of providing security services. The Outer Rim has been plagued by raiders for too long. The Yule representative's crystalline features shifted, and what the translator indicated was disapproval. It also means that your species will be closely monitored. Your intervention here may have been motivated by noble intentions, but power without oversight leads to tyranny. Lee looked around the room at the assembled alien faces, seeing fear, hope, calculation, and suspicion in equal measure. Humanity had stumbled into galactic politics in the most dramatic way possible, and now they would have to live with the consequences. There's something you all need to understand, Lee said finally. We didn't come out here looking for power or territory, or trade advantages. We came to explore, to learn, to see what was beyond our little corner of space. When we heard that distress call, we responded because that's what we do. We help those who need help. And when someone you define as evil stands in your way, the Moore ambassador asked pointedly. Then we stop them, Lee replied without hesitation. We've learned from our own history that sometimes good people have to do terrible things to protect innocent lives. We don't enjoy it, but we won't shy away from it either. The conference broke up with no firm agreements, but with a new understanding. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not as suppliants or conquerors, but as something entirely unprecedented. Deathworlders who fought for others rather than themselves. As the alien ships began to disperse, carrying news of humanity's intervention to every corner of the galaxy, Administrator Tem approached Captain Lee one final time. Captain, there is something you should know. The beacon we sent, it was never supposed to reach your species. The quantum frequencies we used are highly restricted, shared only among the oldest alliance partners. Lee frowned. Then how did we receive it? We believe, Tem said slowly, that your technology operates on principles that naturally resonate with our most sacred communication methods. In the oldest Kelm traditions, this would be considered a sign of destined alliance. You're saying we were meant to hear your call? I'm saying that perhaps the galaxy has been waiting for a species like yours longer than anyone realized. The Vex have grown bold because no one has been willing or able to stop them. Other predator species have begun expanding their territories. The balance of power has been shifting toward those who take, rather than those who build. Tem's bioluminescent patterns shifted to brilliant whites and golds. Your arrival may herald a new age, Captain. An age where the strong protect the weak, rather than prey upon them. As the Resilience prepared for the long journey back to Earth, Lee stood on the bridge watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was adjusting to the knowledge that humanity existed. Trade routes were being recalculated, defense strategies were being revised, and in the dark spaces between stars, predators were learning to fear the mention of a small blue world called Earth. The age of humanity had begun, not with conquest or diplomacy, but with a simple act of courage, answering a stranger's call for help. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would the human race. They had crossed the threshold from a single-world species to galactic citizens, carrying with them all the contradictions and complexities that made them uniquely human. Stars no longer seemed so distant or so cold. They were filled with life, with civilizations both peaceful and predatory, with opportunities and challenges beyond imagination. And somewhere among those distant suns, other voices might be calling for help, waiting for someone brave enough to answer. The Resilience turned toward home, but Lee knew it was only the beginning. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or traitors, but as guardians. It was a role they had never asked for, but one they would embrace with all the fierce determination of a species that had learned to thrive on a world that tried to kill them every day. The galaxy had called, and the Deathworlders had answered. Everything else would follow from that single fateful decision to help strangers in need.